Do you want to get into blacksmithing, but you just don't know where to start? Maybe you're afraid you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars for a fully equipped shop with a couple of forges and a big anvil, a power hammer, all this really nice stuff that I have in my shop. You don't need that stuff to start. I've been doing this for 40 years and slowly acquiring tools and equipment and upgrading my ability to do the work the way I want to over that entire 40 years. Chances are that's not where you need to start. Now last year I did a little series of videos on starting with $500 to buy the tools and the materials you needed to have a fairly basic shop, but enough to actually do some work and get some things done a lot of people would never want for more. But maybe you didn't have the $500. I did a few other videos that started with a hole in the ground, a hairdryer for a blower, scrap lumber for the fuel, a claw hammer instead of having a nice cross peen or ball peen hammer. Dirt cheap stuff, a lot of it people have around the house. So we kind of talked about how to start with a lot less money than what I have invested in my tools and equipment here at Black Bear Forge. But another concern that lots of you had was about space. You didn't have a yard to dig a hole in. Maybe you live in an apartment. Maybe you got a homeowners association and Karen across the street's not going to let you do any kind of blacksmithing, no matter how quiet you are, how safe you are. And you have to find some other way to start your journey in blacksmithing. Now, my first blacksmithing experiences were junior high and high school shop classes. Those really weren't the things that made me think I wanted to be a blacksmith, but they were something kind of filed in the back of my mind. And of course, I didn't have to have any blacksmithing experience or tools, equipment, shop space, any of that to take part in those shop classes. Unfortunately, that's something that a lot of people don't have available anymore. So if you want to have some sort of blacksmithing experience, you're going to need to take a little bit more personal initiative than was needed way back then. When I decided I wanted to learn more blacksmithing, there was no internet. My resource material were library books. Public library probably had 10 or 12 books, and I checked them out regularly. I'd check out 3 or 4, take them back when they were due, check out another 3 or 4. And I probably had some of those books in my possession most of a year because I kept checking the same ones out over and over again. Now back then, I did not have any shop space of my own. I didn't have any place to work. I was renting, so I didn't have my own property. But I was lucky enough that my in-laws would let me work at their place. I started in my in-laws' backyard with a home-built brake drum forge. Yesterday, I ran into somebody at the grocery store that watches the videos, a younger smith just getting started on his journey, and he works in his parents' backyard, very similar situation. So maybe you know somebody that will let you use their property, their yard, and set up that way. Not going to be available to anybody, but it's a possibility. Another thing I did back then, even though I had very little experience, is I volunteered at a local historic site, kind of a little living history thing. It was mostly open to school kids on the weekdays. They'd take a field trip out. They had built some old sod houses, had a one-room schoolhouse and a little blacksmith shop, and it made for better presentation for the school kids if there was somebody in the shop working. They didn't care what you were doing, but there was a forge, an anvil, vise, workbench, and a very limited selection of hand tools. So I'd go in there and work and be available for the school kids to drop by and see the blacksmith working in the shop. And that gave me a chance to work with some better equipment than what I had available in an actual shop setting. So maybe you've got some sort of a museum shop, living history site, historical site that needs volunteers. It's not a paid thing, but volunteers that'll come in and maybe work 1 or 2 days a week or just a few hours here and there. It's worth checking out, and it's worth going to those sites. And if there is a blacksmith there, talk to them. Find out how you get in on that kind of thing. And let them know that you're just getting started. Maybe they'll be able to help you out. Over the years, I've encountered lots of other blacksmiths that didn't necessarily have a place to work at their homes. They didn't have the property. They didn't have a living situation that allowed them to blacksmith. I've seen people that rented a garage from somebody else, knew somebody that had a neighbor or somebody close by that no longer drove a car but could use a little extra money, so they rented their garage out and he had a place to work in the garage. I've seen people that rent industrial spaces. Now that's pretty expensive if you're a hobbyist smith and you're renting an industrial space. You got to have a fair amount of money. But boy, would that be nice. You'd have big power, tall ceilings so you could work, probably 3-phase powered most industrial parks. That'd be a wonderful situation if you got that. Maybe even plumbing and a flush toilet, which I'd really like to have around here. But that's probably a little extreme for most people if you're just trying to find shop space to start with. Another option might be a maker space. I don't know if you've heard about maker spaces. They're generally old warehouses or something that somebody's bought and subdivided into smaller spaces, and those are rented out to individuals. There might be a ceramics artist, a woodworker, somebody doing auto body work, blacksmith, welder, who knows, all sorts of different people go to those spaces and rent their little 200 square feet, 300 square feet, whatever the case is. Don't know what those cost. It's certainly more than setting up shop in your backyard. But if you don't have a backyard and you do have a little extra money, a maker space might be the way to go. I even saw somebody on YouTube a few years ago that the maker space was a series of shipping containers. So there was a big lot, somebody brought in shipping containers. Each container had a window out the backside in addition to the front doors on it, and had 220 power brought into the shipping container. So you could set up a small shop in your container, lock the doors, wire the power however you needed to wire it up. And you could probably set one of those up to be a fairly efficient small blacksmith shop. I don't know where you find a space like that, but that's part of taking the personal initiative to get out and find out what's available in your area. Now, the one piece of advice I have for you, regardless of what space you have, maybe you've got a barn and you've inherited some tools, you can set up shop, you can get started right away, or maybe you are living in an apartment and have absolutely no place to work, and that is to get involved with a blacksmithing group. These groups exist all over the place. I'm sure there's plenty of parts in the world that don't have them, so I can't do anything about that. But here in the U.S., there are dozens of these groups. You just have to be willing to drive to where they are. For me, it's about a 3-hour drive to go to a meeting. When you get traffic in the afternoon, when you're coming home, it could be a 5-hour drive. But it's well worth it if it's a demonstration or a workshop that has some interest to you. And just about every one of these groups has regular workshops or demonstrations where you can go to somebody else's shop, see what they're doing. They're going to share some sort of information with you. It might be a hands-on workshop, so you actually get to do some forging yourself. Maybe it's just a chance to watch somebody else work. But there's going to be other people there, people you can talk to, find out where they work, find out what kind of situation they have. And if you let them know you're just getting started, they're probably going to be eager to help you out. If I get somebody in my shop for one of these demonstrations that has never swung a hammer and wants to give it a try, I'll make time at the end of the demonstration after everybody else is starting to filter out and go home, and we'll heat some iron up and we'll do some forging and we'll give them that first forging experience. This is where you're going to find people that have a shop space and are looking for somebody to hang out with. So come on over to my place and we'll do a little bit of forging. The bigger professional shops, people doing it all the time, probably aren't going to open their shops up for you to come into. But a lot of the small shops, the hobbyists, would love to have somebody to hang out with on Saturday that just wants to forge and open their shops up. And they have 2 or 3 people, 4 people, whatever, come over at the same time on Saturday. You have coffee, you work at the anvil, and you get to experience blacksmithing that way. And the way you find out about those opportunities is to get involved with a group. Now, how do you find a group? Here in the United States, ABANA, the Artist Blacksmithing Association of North America, is the larger group. That's the national group. And there are lots of affiliate groups. You can go to the ABANA website, abana.org, and go to the affiliate links there, and you can find a map that shows all of the affiliate groups across the country. And some states have 2 or 3, some states don't have any. But if you're willing to drive for a few hours, you can probably find a group close to you. And if you're willing to drive further, you might find 2 or 3 groups that aren't that hard to get to. Frequently, people will spend the night. I've had people come up, we've got enough property here, people camp. I've got closer friends that will stay in the house. We got a spare bedroom, and there's 1 or 2 really close friends that get to argue about who gets the bedroom for a specific event and who has to sleep on a cot in the living room. But those opportunities exist, and as you meet people, you get to know people, you're more likely to have somebody say, hey, if you're coming to the event this weekend, I've got room for you. You can stay at my place. We'll head over there together on Saturday morning. Or maybe you got to invest in a hotel room or find a local campground, something like that. But there are ways to get to these events and spend time with other blacksmiths, get to know them, and you'll really jumpstart your blacksmithing education. When I was first getting started, I did find a shop that would let me come visit. It was a professional shop, so it was like a half hour. You can come over and say hi and see what's going on in the shop. But it wasn't someplace I was going to go hang out on the weekends, anything like that. But he said, this weekend, Rocky Mountain Smiths is coming by. We're going to have a demo this weekend. You're welcome to attend. I was new, I was green, I had no real experience, and I was so self-conscious, I didn't go. I thought, oh, I can't hang out with these guys. These are real blacksmiths. I don't really belong with this group. And that was one of the biggest mistakes I ever made. The folks in these groups are eager to help new smiths, so if you're new, by all means go, be honest with them, say, hey, I've never even swung a hammer or a piece of hot iron. I just want to figure out how to get started. And those are the people that are going to help you get started. They're also the ones that know where the tools are. A lot of them have extra tools that they would love to pass on to somebody else, and usually at a pretty reasonable price. Some of them not so much, but frequently at these events, people will load up the tools that they aren't using anymore, and they'll have them for sale out wherever the parking is. You can look in their pickup truck, there might be an anvil or a vise or a couple old pairs of tongs, a hammer, something like that. Heck, at the last event we had here a little over a month ago, I gave away probably a couple $1,000s worth of tools I wasn't using anymore because I just wanted the space back. And I would rather see those tools in the hands of people that need the tools than to keep storing them in the shipping container and having to move them out of the way so I can get to the back of the shipping container. You don't find opportunities like that unless you attend the events. That's really important. Get involved. Sometimes these will be demonstrations you just watch. Sometimes they'll be hands-on workshops. Often those are limited participation. Maybe there's only 5 or 6 people that get to attend those because there's not enough tooling or shop space to go around and still get the job done. And sometimes they'll have classes. Different places have classes. And the way you find out is to join the groups and participate. But additionally, most of these groups will print a newsletter. ABANA, the national organization, prints the Anvil's Ring. This features blacksmiths and their work, and is some pretty high quality work that you find in here. This is really the inspiration to do better and to get serious. They also print the Hammer's Blow, and this is more instructional, has more beginner and intermediate information in it, and both of these are part of being a member of ABANA. Our local group, Rocky Mountain Smiths, prints a newsletter, the Forge Facts. These frequently have highlights of the recent demos, so if you missed a demo, you can kind of catch up what's going on. There's usually classified ads in the backs of these and some how-to articles. And every group is different with what they print. It might be worth joining groups you're never going to be able to travel to just because they've got a really good newsletter. Now, if you're not in the US and you're in the UK, there's the British Artist Blacksmithing Association. They print the Artist Blacksmith is their newsletter. And this is similar to the Anvil's Ring, but it's enough different. There's just a different style of work from people in that part of the world. I really like getting this. I will probably never attend one of their events, but I like being able to see what people are up to over there and get a little bit different perspective on what kind of work can be done. It seems to be a little bit more contemporary, and it's some really good inspiration. So I enjoy getting this, even if I don't ever attend. But there are groups all over the United States. There's groups in England, and I know I have seen announcements for get-togethers in other parts of the world through Europe and stuff. I've heard about people in Canada, people in Australia having blacksmithing groups. So you have to do the legwork in your area. You gotta be self-motivated, go out and find these groups. And another advantage to these groups, at least Rocky Mountain Smiths, we have a lending library. So you can rent books if you're here in the US. I don't think they'll ship internationally, but there's a book list on the website, and it does cost a little bit of money to get a book out of the library, but that's mostly to cover the shipping costs so that it can be shipped out to you and shipped back. And it's a huge And it's a huge library. Just about every book I've ever seen on blacksmithing exists in that library. So if you're looking for a book that you'd have to pay $75 or $80 to buy a copy of, you can rent it for a few weeks from the Rocky Mountain Smiths library. Rocky Mountain Smiths also has DVDs available for past conferences. All the conference demonstrations are videoed. So if you want to see Rob Gunther, Francis Whitaker, Darrell Nelson, any of those people demonstrating, you can get a hold of those DVDs through Rocky Mountain Smiths. If you're a member, you might be able to buy the DVDs if you're not a member, but if you're using the library, you have to be an active member to do that. Other organizations are going to have similar benefits. You just have to check out what's available near you. So I strongly encourage you to get involved. It's going to cost you $20 for a demo plus gas and your meals. Really, to me, I think that's the best place to start your blacksmithing journey before you ever start buying tools, before you do anything else. And after you've had a few experiences at some of these events and you say, yes, I really want to get involved in this, maybe the thing to do is take a class. Some of these groups will have classes. Some of the members of the groups may have their own little schools. Rocky Mountain Smiths doesn't do classes anymore because there were several members that had small schools, and the group didn't want to compete with the membership. So those members might still have schools. And where do you find those? In the classified ads in the back of the magazine. And if you want to know about bigger schools here in the U.S. anyways, they're going to advertise in the Anvil's ring, places like the New Agrarian School, Penland School, New England Center of Metal Works, John C. Campbell Folk School. All of those places have classes. It's not cheap to attend a class like that. Another advantage of belonging to these organizations, a lot of them have scholarships. Abana offers scholarships to help pay so you can go to one of these schools, and that's a place you can really learn some blacksmithing with some excellent instructors. There's usually an obligation to share what you've learned with your group when you get back, so you'll have to do a little demonstration yourself, and that might make you a little nervous, but it is worth taking advantage of the scholarship, going to the classes, coming back. A 4-hour demo or writing a little article for your local newsletter isn't that big a deal. You'll get through it just fine. Those are just a few ideas. If you want to get started, but you're struggling with not having the tools, not having the space, or maybe needing a little bit of mentorship. I hope that helps you out. And for those that do have a shop, I hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop, make something, stay safe, wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video.